Okay, so today we are going to continue with our investigation of what I call the activities of the mind and body, the activities of the mind and body. And this one is in regards to emotions. And where we have been so far is we started off with resourcing. Very important to find a resource, a place that you can direct your attention to, that you feel safer, maybe more at peace. Um, and you might not feel totally safe, but just a place that you feel safer. Okay. Where we've learned a little bit about titrating and pendulating, where we come from our resource, a place that we feel safer, to uh, bringing in more and more of occurrences or experiences that happen in the present moment. If your resource is, if you feel a hard time being embodied, for instance, and your resource is something external, like an image of a guru or a saint or a religious figure or an imagination of a beautiful beach, et cetera, then your titration and pendulation may actually be to come into your body, to come and embody and feel present in your body. And this might take months or years. All right. And it starts with finding a place in your body, for instance, that you can direct your attention to, that you feel safest in, and that might be like your pinky, and allowing your safeness to expand from there while you're titrating or pendulating back from your resource to your pinky, resource, pinky, and sort of sharing the awareness and sort of broadening the awareness from your resource into your body. Then we did a whole month of breath work. We looked at a lot of research involving breath work, the importance of nasal breathing physiologically, how numerous studies have shown that breathing can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. We went into a practice of expanding our awareness, going from feeling like 1 point contact to 2 points of contact, and sort of ping-ponging back and forth from the sensation of two different parts of our body, and then seeing if we can coalesce that sensation. And then we went to 3 points of the body, and having that experience of seeing if we can take these sensations that we're feeling and directing them to touch initially and coalescing them. We did the I am meditation. Then we entered into the world of our senses. We looked a little bit into the anatomy of our skin, and just the beautiful intricacy of what this 2 millimeter layer of skin is actually made of, how many different layers there are, how the different cells are compacted, how there's so much space in there actually, the fluid, the different cell types, and the different receptors that were coming up right to the edge of our skin and perceiving vibration and frequency, and different thresholds of frequency, and how we're taking all this in real time. And these are like our little antenna, right? Perceiving. Okay. And we looked at scanning electron micrographs of images of the skin, looking even into the deeper layers, seeing how much space there was, and how intricately interwoven the nerves are with the blood vessels and the fascia, the intercellular tissues, and how much space there was, and how much fluid could be filling that space, and sort of working into anatomically, how do we go from like a tiny, skin cell into the tissue, to the bone, to the muscle, to the nerve, to the blood vessel, and then looking at various organs, looking at the diaphragm, the dome of the diaphragm, and how it intimately interacts with the spine, et cetera, et cetera. And then looking at placing our awareness. Usually, we're always perceiving, sort of having our our searchlights, let's say, focusing out, like my eyes are looking out, I'm listening and I'm hearing what's coming from the outside, I'm touching and I'm perceiving what's coming from the outside. And then we sort of shifted our perspective a little bit and brought that awareness inside and said, what am I noticing from the inside? What am I noticing from the inside? Almost as if, you would bring your perspective in through the skin, go into your nerves, into your blood vessels, and we sort of explored that. And then we went into some of the activities of the mind, including thoughts. And today we're going to go into the activity of our mind and body with emotions. The reason for this is that these are all things that are going to occur for you. These are things that occur for everyone. Whether you're in a deep state of meditation or you are having a Kundalini awakening, there's going to be thoughts and emotions that arise. I can guarantee you that. Okay. The more comfortable we are with anything that arises in the moment, the more we are going to be in relationship with what is occurring in the presence. Right? And we don't block it from either unfolding naturally. We don't block a beautiful relationship like a dance that may sort of occur. Okay. Imagine I was, let's say, 12 years old or I'll use a very real example. Okay. When I met my wife, imagine if the moment she came and we met, that I would have frozen, been like, oh my God, and not be able to say my name, not be able to say hello, not be able to reach out my hand and say, wow, you have beautiful hands, which is what I told her on our first meeting. Right. And I just froze. That's the same thing that can happen because let's say as a strong emotion comes that you're not familiar with, or you don't like, or you don't want, or whatever it might be, because there's some resistance. And that emotion might actually be unconditional love, just putting that out there. Right? It might also be fear, one and the same. If we freeze or we are resistant, right, that relationship is going to start to get kind of like muddled, like, oh my God. And then what happens, right? Let's say I froze when I saw my wife for the first time and I couldn't communicate with her. Then I go into oh my God, I'm such a weird person. And then I go into like this self-judgment, right? And then maybe I go into like anxiety, like, can I interact with anybody? Am I going to ever have a relationship with anybody that I feel that I feel attracted to, or that I feel, right? It's the exact same thing. Okay. So thoughts are going to appear. Emotions are going to appear. Strong, powerful, moving emotions are going to appear. You might feel as if you are being constricted, like a boa constrictor is around you. You might feel as if you are actually expanding out to infinity. And you're wondering, is this ever going to stop? Because I feel like I'm going to just be stretched to nothingness. In this emotion that is arising as a felt sense, maybe in the body, or triggered by a thought, whatever happens. If you look at the word emotion and the derivation of the word, it's emotion, E/motion. E means out, motion means to move. It's actually from Latin, emovere, to move out. Right? It's not to keep in, it's to move out. My biggest problem when I was younger is I didn't know how to allow emotions to flow. And so what happened is when I would feel it, I'd tense up. And what happens when you tense up? Just like water flowing, you tense up and it stops. Right? And it took some time to slowly allow, be present with the emotion, allow, and then what would happen, right, is even stronger emotions would come from underneath. And yes, tears might come, you might cry, you might shake violently, you might even get so angry that you're screaming and yelling and getting this energy out that you feel like is coming up. There are multiple times in my life where I have yelled at a white wall. I try not to yell at people, although that has happened. That has happened as well. But I feel an emotion arising, and what do? I let it out. I try to let it out to an inanimate object like a wall, or I go outside and I just go, because what am I feeling? That's what I'm feeling is coming up at this time, and I have to let it go. Otherwise, what happens? It constrains me, right? I started doing this literally. I started doing this, all right, when I was in residency and I was driving, and I was so stressed by residency and call and all this stuff. And literally I was driving, and after and as I was driving, I would be in the car and I would just go, and I'd make the weirdest sounds. And it was just like the most natural, energetic release that was coming up. And what was that? I was scared. I was fearful. I was angry. Why? I was scared that I would be on call and make a mistake and injure somebody, right? I was fearful that I wouldn't get the right diagnosis, let's say. I'm going into call. I'm going to be by myself, let's say, for 30 hours. I don't know what, all the thoughts that come up with that. I didn't study enough. I'm not good enough to everything that you could imagine. And I got to call. Hey guys, what's going on? Who do we have to admit now? Same thing happened with love. Same thing happened with love. I'd be listening to music or being in a beautiful relationship, and I would feel an uprising, and maybe tears would come, right? And I'd stop them. Stop, block, stop, stop, stop. So things are going to emerge. Emotions, motion, move it, allow it. Allow this energy form, just like the thought process, to move. Thoughts are totally normal. Emotions are totally normal. If you're a human being, you have the potential of having any single emotion that has ever existed and will ever exist in eternity. If you block yourself from, I don't have those emotions. I don't get depressed. I don't get anxious. I don't get sad. I don't feel grief, whatever it might be. You're blocking yourself from a whole system of energy that's flowing, right? Just like thoughts. I can't have that thought. Have you ever had a thought that you're just like, where in the world did this thought come from? I've never thought of anything like that. You're like, oh, well, if it's emerging from a totally undifferentiated, pure awareness, it can be anything. Why limit? can't be limited. So here we are as manifestations, as pure awareness, and what's going to emerge? Anything. We have to be okay with that emergence as our differentiated selves. The awareness is totally okay with it. I guarantee you. It's the differentiated self. It's the mind. It's the creation of our individual entities that struggles with it. That's not who I am. I can't have that emotion. I don't know how to process that. I don't know how to, no, I don't cry. Don't cry. It's totally normal. It's totally normal. I'm angry, feeling sad, I'm feeling depressed, whatever it might be. I'm feeling anxious right now. Have you ever felt an emotion and been anxious for like 5 minutes? Like, oh, as opposed to like it just lasts forever. All right. So, what you'll notice is that we need to come up with a way of working with emotions. And I see emotions just like any weather pattern that comes in, just like thoughts. There's a constant stream of emotions. There's a constant stream of energy patterns. There's a constant stream of thoughts that is emerging. Here it comes. Okay. And that's it. That's it. Just like today, it's sunny out here. I'm not like paying to, okay, well, how can we go to baseball practice or not in the afternoon? But I'm not like, oh, let me get a fan out and try to get rid of the rain or the sun. That's the energy pattern that's present today. Some energy patterns like to kind of stick around for longer than others. So it's very important that we start to understand emotion, just like we start to understand a thought, that not all thoughts, we don't have to believe all thoughts, and we don't have to believe all emotions. We don't have to fully identify them. That there's a constant stream of thoughts that's occurring. There's a constant stream of emotions and feelings that's occurring. All right. The important part too is to understand that we have a very, very powerful reactivity mechanism that occurs. We have a tendency of going towards positive emotions, and we have a tendency of resisting and not wanting negative emotions. And with each emotion, with each thought or emotion that arises, there's actually a judgment that we put on it of whether we find it to be a pleasant one or an unpleasant one or a neutral one, and that we gravitate towards the pleasant ones. As much as we gravitate towards, let's say, love and joy, and we resist fear and anger, there's a lack of balance. What we need to do is bring these into unison and have them flow equally. In that flow is where the bliss emerges. It's not that you're just holding on to love. It's in the allowing the flow to occur. Right? It's that perfect dynamic balance. Here we are. Okay. So, because certain energy patterns, let's say certain weather patterns, have a tendency of sticking around, we need a tool to work with difficult emotions. Today, we're going to practice one that I have found to be very useful. And we did this a year ago as well. But I encourage you in this work to try to find a tool that works for you, that helps you with difficult emotions. That helps you with difficult emotions. And it might be working with a therapist. It might be working with a counselor. There's things like the emotional freedom technique, or the emotional tapping, for instance, where you bring up an emotion and you tap different energy points. There's a lot of different tools. This is one that I've found to be very effective, and you can do it both in a formal, like meditation practice, and an informal, where literally I'll be driving down the street and I'll bring to awareness some emotion that I'm having in real time. This practice was popularized by Tara Brach, who works a lot with Jack Kornfield in teaching mindfulness. She has a Buddhist training as well, and it was popularized by her. And it's the RAIN practice, where it's RAIN, and each of the letters stands for an acronym, which we'll go over. The practice can be very simple, and it's simply bringing awareness to the emotions that we're having and being honest and authentic with ourselves. A lot of this comes out of the research that was done at UCLA, where they were showing people some images of events that would trigger real powerful negative emotions. And they were being scanned, their brains were being scanned in real time, and they were watching for different areas of the brain that were being activated in real time as you were being shown these images that triggered very powerful emotions. And what they saw is that the amygdala would, we say it lights up. It's like on fire. It's very active when you are in a very intense emotional state. Your amygdala is very active. And oftentimes when we act purely from our amygdala, we don't incorporate the higher parts of our brain, like the frontal cortex or the prefrontal cortex, which are the more evolved parts of the brain. And we can act from the amygdala, but usually it's very reactive. There's not much of a response to the situation. What they asked the people to do as they were being shown these real powerful images that evoke negative emotions is they did the scans at first, and they saw that the amygdala was really lit up. And then what they asked them to do was they asked them to label the emotion they were having. Name it. And you may have heard this term, this sort of adage before it: name it to tame it. Name it to tame it. I do this with my wife, and I do it with our kids all the time. What are you feeling, right? What are you feeling? Where are you feeling it in your body? A lot of times they don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm just frustrated, right? Or whatever it might be. Good. So you're feeling frustrated. When they were asked to name, and then they were given a questionnaire, and they were saying, how intense was this emotion for you? And then, it was like from 0 to 10, it was a Likert scale. And before naming it, the emotion was like super intense. And then what they saw was when they named the emotion, what naming the emotion did is it activated their prefrontal cortex. So they actually saw it in real time. They saw the prefrontal cortex being activated because what were they doing? They were using language to name the emotion that they were having in real time right now. What are you feeling? Feeling fear. Oh. And what they noticed is when they brought in their prefrontal cortex, their amygdala decreased. The firing on the amygdala actually lessened. And there was communication between parts of the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is more of an evolved, we can plan and problem solve, as opposed to just coming from the amygdala, uh, more of a reactive response. All right. So this process is a process of working with difficult emotions. And when you do the practice, you actually bring up a difficult situation that triggers an emotion. And when I would do the practice, what I recommend is doing it on like an emotion that has like an intensity level of like 3 out of 10, not something that's going to like trigger panic or severe anxiety or something like that. Do it when you're practicing. Bring up something that's like, oh, that they gave me the wrong change at the grocery store, and I'm still kind of annoyed about that. Whatever it is, right? Or something that it's not too triggering. It's good to do this practice on. And so then we'll go into the practice. The R is simply to recognize. So that's the first part of like an emotion, right? Is to recognize what emotion you're having. That's sort of like the name it. Like what's the event? The A is to allow or accept. Now, this isn't, we're not accepting, let's say, if somebody injured you or hurt you, we're not accepting their actions. What we're doing in this practice is we're accepting the present moment emotion that's arising in you. So you're accepting that present moment. You're allowing that present moment to just be as it is. The I is then to investigate, and this is to investigate it as a sense in the body. Right? And then the N is to nurture or non-judgmental. I like the nurture because it's more of a healing. You nurture yourself with self-love, self-compassion, loving kindness from whatever source you feel comfortable doing it from. Right. Now, this is a very specific tool and technique to work with difficult emotions. You learn to work with difficult emotions so that if any emotions do arise, you can simply learn how to name it. Oh, even in a state of meditation. Oh, what's arising right now? You recognize it. Oh, I'm recognizing this is arising. Can you allow it to be there? Even if you're doing a totally different meditation, right? Let's say you're doing like a Wim Hof practice and all of a sudden something arises. You have this tool in your toolbox. As something comes up, oh, let me recognize it. Let me activate my prefrontal cortex. Can I allow it, or am I purely resisting it? Am I accepting it, or am I not accepting it? Can I investigate this as a sensation? And the interesting part here is to take the emotion and to see, can you investigate it as a sensation in the body? Okay. So it's almost like you're taking this thing that we've defined, let's say sadness, and I'm saying, what does sadness feel like as a sensation in your body? And how do you know that's sadness? Oh, well, I've had this before and I've always interpreted it as sadness, but what do you feel? I'm feeling a constriction in my heart. Oh, my chest. Ah, can you draw a border around it? Where does it end? Where does it begin? And you're actually going in. And so this is why we did the anatomy first, right? Looking at the chest and the heart and the diaphragm and things like that. Colon, because you may feel sensations in different anatomical parts. And it can help to totally be like, oh, I feel it in, oh, wow, it feels actually, it's like, have you ever sensed it's like, oh, I feel it in my ovaries. I feel it in my womb. Women may have that. If you've had a surgery, for instance, and you've had a part of your body taken out, the blueprint is still there. So the energetics of, let's say, if you had a gallbladder removed or a hysterectomy or something like that, the energetics is still there. So you might still feel it. Well, but I don't have a gallbladder, or, you know, a uterus. Oh, but the blueprint is still there. And there's still a relationship to that with the other body parts and stuff like that. So this is why the anatomy is really good to know, because then you can go into it from an anatomical perspective and sort of, see what it feels like, that sensation, that emotion as a sensation in the body. Okay. All right. So let's go into our practice.